Imagine walking into a restaurant, the richest man in the city sitting at a table, demanding the finest steak money can buy. Every eye is on him. He thinks he can control everything, until a young black waitress slips him a small note. What's written on it stops him cold, and in that moment, everything he thought he knew about power and respect shatters. You won't believe what happens next. The moment Jonathan Pierce stepped into the restaurant, it felt like the air itself had shifted. Heads turned, conversations paused, and the soft clink of silverware seemed to fade into silence. Jonathan wasn't just any guest. He was a billionaire CO, a man whose name alone carried weight across continents. His tailored navy blue suit hugged his frame perfectly. His designer watch gleamed under the dim restaurant lights, and the faint scent of expensive cologne lingered in the air. Every step he took radiated confidence and entitlement. He scanned the room with a practiced, almost predatory gaze. Other diners instinctively lowered their eyes, feeling the presence of someone accustomed to having the world bend to his will. Jonathan wasn't here for small talk or casual dining. He was here for the perfect steak, accompanied by the finest wine, prepared exactly to his specifications. Anything less, he thought, would be unacceptable. Meanwhile, behind the counter and weaving gracefully between tables was Maya, a young black waitress with bright eyes and a quiet confidence. She carried herself like she belonged anywhere, even in the presence of someone as intimidating as Jonathan. She had dreams bigger than this town, bigger than this restaurant. She studied business management and entrepreneurship in her spare time, determined to someday leave a mark on the world that no one could ignore. For now, though, she worked here, serving food, learning people, and observing the way power could warp even the wealthiest individuals. When Maya approached Jonathan's table to take his order, she noticed everything. The sharp cut of his jawline, the slight impatience in his eyes, and the way he barely glanced at her as if she were invisible. But she didn't flinch. Instead, she smiled warmly, introducing herself with politeness that masked the sharp mind behind her calm demeanor. She listened carefully as he barked his order for a medium-rare steak, truffle mashed potatoes, and a glass of Cabernet Sauvignon. The way he spoke made it clear that he expected absolute perfection. Even as he dismissed her with a wave, Maya quietly assessed him. She knew this was more than just a dinner. It was a test, a moment where courage, wit, and a small act could make a powerful impact. And she was ready. Jonathan Pierce barely looked at Maya as she wrote down his order. To him, she was just another server, another person whose job was to cater to his whims. But Maya noticed everything. The impatience in his voice, the way he scanned the room as if the world owed him attention, the subtle way he tapped his fingers on the table, signaling his expectation perfection. Most people would shrink under that kind of presence. Most people would comply without question. But Maya wasn't most people. As she walked back to the kitchen, Maya's mind raced. She had seen men like Jonathan before, powerful, wealthy, untouchable. They believed money could buy respect, obedience, even morality. But she had also learned something critical. Even the richest people have a blind spot, a place where words, courage, and honesty can reach them. Tonight, she decided to find that spot, with a small piece of paper in hand. She carefully wrote a note. Her handwriting was neat, deliberate, and confident. She folded it twice and slipped it beneath the plate before it was served. A bold move, but one she knew was worth it. The note was simple, yet it carried weight. Not everything money can buy is yours. Sometimes the cost isn't in dollars, it's in humanity. Returning to Jonathan's table with a practiced smile, Maya placed a steak in front of him. She made brief eye contact, calm and collected, as if nothing unusual had happened. Jonathan, focused on his meal, didn't notice the small folded note at first. But when he glanced down, curiosity, or maybe irritation, drew his eyes to the paper. He hesitated, then unfolded it carefully. Those words, so simple and unassuming, hit him harder than any business deal, any luxury purchase, or any affirmation of his power ever could. For the first time in a long while, Jonathan Pierce felt a flicker of uncertainty. And Maya? She walked away quietly, knowing she had just shifted the course of his evening, and possibly his life. Jonathan Pierce's eyes widened as he read the note. Not everything money can buy is yours. Sometimes the cost isn't in dollars. It's in humanity. His first instinct was anger. How dare a waitress, someone he had never even truly noticed, challenge him in this way? He had spent decades building his empire, making decisions worth millions, yet this small slip of paper had the power to shake him in a way no business deal ever had. He stared at the note again, disbelief mingling with a strange sense of curiosity. How could such a simple message unsettle him so profoundly? He looked up at Maya, who was calmly taking another order across the room, her back straight, her demeanor composed. For a fleeting second, their eyes met, and she offered a polite nod. That small gesture made Jonathan realize she wasn't just a waitress. She was someone who understood more than he had anticipated, someone who could see past his wealth and his power to the person he really was. He tried to dismiss the feelings creeping into his mind, but they refused to leave. The words echoed in his head. The cost isn't in dollars, it's in humanity. Suddenly, memories flashed before him. The times he'd been impatient, dismissive, or arrogant, expecting obedience and respect simply because of his status. It was a side of himself he rarely allowed himself to see, and yet here it was, reflected so clearly by a stranger's words. Jonathan felt a twinge of vulnerability, a sensation he hadn't experienced in years. He realized that no amount of money, luxury, or power could shield him from the truth of who he was becoming. For the first time, the billionaire CEO felt small in a way he couldn't buy his way out of. And in that quiet, shocking moment, he understood that Maya's note had done something far more powerful than he could have imagined. It had made him pause, reflect, and truly see himself. Jonathan Pierce could no longer ignore the ripple Maya had created in his thoughts. He motioned for her to come over, his usual commanding tone replaced with a subtle hesitance he rarely displayed. The restaurant seemed to fade into the background as Maya approached, her calm presence contrasting sharply with the storm of emotions swirling inside him. "Did you really write this note?" he asked, his voice measured but tinged with curiosity. Maya nodded, her expression steady, almost serene. "Yes, sir," she said quietly. "I just wanted to remind you that not everything money can buy is yours." Jonathan studied her closely, trying to understand her courage. "Why me?" he asked, his voice softening. He wasn't used to being questioned or challenged, especially by someone serving his food. "Because I've seen people like you," Maya replied, choosing her words carefully. "People with power, influence, and wealth who forget the value of respect, empathy, and humanity. Money can buy almost anything, but it can't buy these things. I wanted to remind you of that before it was too late." Her honesty struck a chord deep within him. Jonathan had spent his life pursuing success, wealth, and control, yet he realized now that something vital had been missing: human connection. He had ignored it, dismissed it, or assumed it could be bought. But Maya's words made him see his own arrogance reflected back in a way he couldn't deny. For the first time in years, Jonathan Pierce felt humbled. He recognized the truth of her message and felt an unfamiliar stirring of respect. Not for her position, but for her courage, wisdom, and clarity. He had been given a rare gift, a chance to pause, reflect, and reconsider who he was becoming. "Thank you," he said quietly, almost to himself. "You've made me rethink a lot tonight." Maya smiled gently, a quiet acknowledgement of the impact one small act of courage could have on even the most powerful person in the room. By the time Jonathan Pierce finished his steak, something fundamental had shifted inside him. He wasn't the same man who had walked into the restaurant moments ago. Maya's simple note and her courageous words had cracked the armor of arrogance he had built over decades. For the first time, he realized that wealth and power could only take him so far. They could never teach him the lessons that mattered most: humility, empathy, and importance of seeing people for who they truly are. Before leaving, Jonathan motioned for Maya to come over one last time. His usual commanding tone was gone, replaced by a quiet sincerity. "You've done something tonight," he said softly, "something no amount of money could ever buy for me, a perspective I desperately needed. Thank you." Maya smiled, a mix of pride and quiet satisfaction. "It's not about me, sir," she said. "It's about remembering that every person deserves respect, regardless of their position in life. That's something money can't buy, and it's something you reminded yourself of tonight." Jonathan nodded, absorbing her words. He knew that this encounter would stay with him long after the restaurant lights dimmed and the doors closed behind him. He had been given a rare opportunity, a chance to reflect on the man he had become and the leader he wanted to be. As he walked out into the cool night air, he felt lighter, more aware, and strangely grateful. And Maya? She returned to her duties with a quiet confidence, knowing that even the smallest act, a note, a word, a choice, could shake the very foundations of power and privilege. Jonathan Pierce had come for a steak. What he left was far more valuable. A lesson in humanity, humility, and the undeniable truth that some of the most important things in life can never be bought. And in that moment, the world, or at least his world, felt a little different, more human, more real, and full of possibilities he had never noticed before. And that's how a simple note from a brave waitress made a billionaire CEO rethink everything he thought he knew about power, respect, and humanity. It just goes to show, sometimes the smallest actions can create the biggest change. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you never miss a story that will leave you thinking. Comment below, what would you do if you were in her shoes?